we got our hands on a pair of rare AKG K240 Sextetts. 600 ohms, basically the model that came before the AKG K240 monitors. These were made in Austria. Bought them from Germany. I have a second pair coming in, but I thought I'd make a video about taking it apart, cleaning it, talking about the sound. So the mic quality, the sound quality is going to drop. Apologies for that. So this was a little bit of an afterthought. I'm actually happy that we did do the left cup first with the cable, because this is a lot more easier to manage. What we're going to have to quickly do is take off the pads and also take out the side plates of the Sextetts. Right on the pad there's a lot of that foam that's already deteriorating and popping out. Right there's a lot of specks on the pad, but what's really interesting is that these are actually the original pads. I was thinking that these would be replacements, but these are not. These are actually the original. You can't really see on the camera, but they are actually tinted a little bit orange, and they have been a little bit worn in. So these have been worn to an extent, but not as much as you would actually really expect for something especially these old. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out how to take out these side panels here, and we'll be right back. So right at the edge of the cup here, you're going to see that there's this little notch, and that's actually where I drove a little bit that I have on my screwdriver through. Now the only issue is that these are actually a very delicate metal, so be very careful for that. You might dent or bend them a lot, so be very, very careful trying to go all the way around. From here on out, we're going to now need a flathead screwdriver to get through here, and I think that would basically be it to get us inside. After taking the plastic cover off, you can see that there's this brass piece. This is what holds the cup and everything all together. So what we're going to have to do is take this out, which is also held in, which is not really clear to see, but that's also a flat head, which is a little bit more wider. As I continue working on these, there is a lot more of the deteriorated foam that is starting to show up. The brass set screw is very, very big. It's a lot more deeper than you would think. I would say almost like 1/4 of an inch in there. From there, you can actually just pop out this side, or well, not the side, but the top part of the cup that connects to portion here for the yoke that allows it to go up and down, left and right. And that just snaps on here. And this is kind of bad. What we're going to do is we're going to avoid having to solder anything, because it looks like we don't need to necessarily do that. But you can see all that foam is completely gone inside of the driver. It's going to make it a lot more harder for me to work on this, but I'm willing to kind of do this to avoid having to break any of the connections. I mentioned this in a previous video, but as soon as I touch it and I just roll it around, this is just gone. It's just dust. So you can get replacement foam for this, which will require you to order it from AKG or from a parts dealer. People can just get away with using another kind of foam that you can buy from pet store or something. On one of my monitors, I do not have the foam in there, and it actually makes it a lot more open. So that'll be very interesting. I'm happy I listened to these with the insulation foam in there first before taking these apart. So we'll definitely have at least a very close comparison between the monitors that have the foam, the monitors that don't have the foam, and the Sextetts that do not have the foam. So that'll be very interesting a little bit later on. So now what we need to do is just very carefully remove all that foam that's all inside of the cup. So we were able to pop out that housing, and now we have access to the whole driver. So it looks like we don't need to desolder it, which I'm very happy about, because that was definitely one of the most stressful things when cleaning up the monitors. So you can see here, we're just gonna take this apart, and here is the driver assembly in the worst angle ever, but also the dying foam. Now, what I know from what I noticed between the monitors that I have that are in really good condition, because typically this foam deteriorates strictly because of moisture. So if these headphones are in close proximity or possibly in more humid climates, The foam is just known to absorb all that moisture and start to rot. Unlike the monitors, these headphones do not come with a foam that lines up on top of the driver housing or the driver opening here, which is actually what makes cleaning it a lot more easier. As you can see that this kind of grid-like design or grater-like design is actually going to be a lot more harder to clean compared to the monitors that have just one driver, because these actually are 6 passive drivers from what I've learned, and these 6 passive drivers is what work together in phase or whatever like that to give the sound that we all like to hear from these. So we have to work really, really hard to remember how these were configured because I totally forgot which side this is, and if we gotta figure it out, we will. So the length of the cable makes me think that this is actually one of the easiest headphones to work on. For basically a majority of the parts were supposed to be very easy to source and also very easy to replace and work on. This is just a nozzle for vacuum to clean up inside of the driver. So as you can see here, I've cleaned a majority of the foam. We're now just going to use a dry paper towel, wipe it around with our hands, put the assembly all back together, and we're going to work on the next cut. I should have probably showed how I snapped this on. Just know that you don't need to worry about any clips or anything. As long as you're safe, you don't need to really stress out about breaking anything when you're putting the cups back on. I just snapped that on there. And what's really great too is that because we didn't actually desolder anything, I don't need to worry about orientation, because as you can see in the bottom portion here of the driver, you can't really see it clearly on the camera, but there's actually 2 holes there, and the third hole at the top where the wire is fed, the red and the white wire. And basically all we need to do is just align that hole with the hole that's on the bottom, and we know exactly what the top and the bottom is. So we don't need to stress about accidentally canceling out the phase or messing up anything with the harmonics here in terms of wiring and position of these passive drivers. So we're just going to put this back on top and screw everything back together. Now I know I'm putting a lot of stress on the cables here, but I just want to make this really clear. This elastic is actually not held in with its own specific set screw. The set screw that you have to use is actually the brass set screw right over there that holds the band. So that brass screw is also what you need to feed through the elastic, so be very cautious about that. Alright, so with a little bit of a struggle, we were able to get her in. Just be a little bit wary that you have to be very careful with how you feed the cables in here. They are a little brittle, very old of course. I'm thinking that the red and the white wire might be actually like pulled through the cup. Like I believe that that red and white cable is actually supposed to like go inside that hole. Don't know how you're going to be able to do that, but that's probably the reason why I had a little bit of trouble with the clearance. But from the looks of things, it's fine. This is going to be able to be housed with the plastic cover on, so I'm not too stressed out about that. It is on and the clearance is perfect. Unlike my monitors, this is actually completely flushed, which is wonderful. Now we just need to put the K240 label back on this, and we have 1 cup down. So to show you how easy it is with 2 hands here, you can just press this down, you can just pull this up, and there you go. Just comes right off. That is that silver part coming out. And now to take these out, what you can do is you can take a flathead for leverage, and you're going to want to look for a portion of the driver here that doesn't have the red passive shielding. So you're going to see that right there. There's that middle notch. So what you're going to want to do is you can put a flathead in here and you can feed it in and you can break it out. There we go. And that's the big portion here, and then we can just rip this because that foam is already broken. And then we can carefully feed everything through. Out of the way. Alright, So this is a little bit of a shorter cable, so it is a little bit harder to clean. But there it is. It's just the most horrific thing you're ever going to see. We're going to start to push the bottom of this cup in. Perfect. And then from here we're going to push the base part on. Wonderful. And then from here we're just going to screw this on here. And there we have it. And we can start feeding this through. And there it is. That is a clean cup. So these are going to be articulating a lot more easier than normal, which is exactly what happened with my monitors. My monitors were a lot more easier to articulate and for them to move. And from there we can actually give these one little clean shakedown again, maybe another run on the vacuum on the drivers here, and put the pads back on. And from here on out, we have a pair of sextets that are completely ready to go. And here we go. The headphones are all put back together. Again, the only difference that is going to be heard mainly is that there may not be as much of a close, intimate sound, and also these cups are going to be just a little bit more easier to articulate and move around your head. But besides that, there shouldn't be any much more of a difference in the sound, and these things are still going to be very, very hard to drive. But that's basically taking these apart and cleaning them. That took not too long, but it is a big mess to deal with. So hopefully this is helpful for anybody else that decides to get vintage AKGs and do need to clean the foam out of them.